Okay, so I'm here with my mentor, Grace Kelly, and I'm really excited for this conversation because I've known Grace for around 10 years. She was one of my first ever mentors and coaches when I started my business, and she's been on a real journey since then, dealing with some real challenges and really a spiritual journey. So I'm excited to talk to Grace. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here, Julie. I can't believe it's a decade. My goodness. I think that was right when I was just starting out in my coaching career. So I love that we're still connected to this day.
Yes, it was. And things have changed a lot since then. I've seen some of your journey and the things you've been through and the different things that you've brought into your work now. So, in a minute, I will invite you to share some of your story. But I remember coming to a retreat with you in Paris. I think that was around 10 years ago, and we were talking about launching my coaching business. So, you actually helped me launch my coaching business and get my first clients. And then I came and saw you in Italy, which was amazing as well. So, yeah, lots of fun times. And then you've been on quite a journey since then, haven't you?
Yeah, goodness. Well, I remember, yeah, just starting out, it was mostly I just had this vision or this dream of working in a really stylish and elegant way because I had been a school teacher in London and I was in this environment that was so drab that the moment I got out of teaching and I set myself up in a coaching business, I decided, well, I want to work in a really glamorous way. And so that was where attending retreats in Paris and Rome and hosting clients and in different parts of the world all came into play. So I'm glad you got an experience of that, Julie. But yes, my business since then, developed and changed and personally, um, changed for the better, changed. I think back then there was a lot of glamour, but there was also there was a level of efforting. Just I didn't see at the time that um, it didn't have to be so hard, you know? And so that sent me on a journey, if you like, of wanting to, I guess, find an easier way. And me finding my easier way, ironically, was to retreat, to just take myself away from everything I was doing, everything I was sort of engaged in and investing in, and to just come back to center. And in doing that, I was led by my own wisdom to attend an event in London after about 3 months of being totally shut down and offline and not available for anything. And as I attended that event, I heard a speaker um, just I heard the speaker touched me with his words, and he was also contradicting, not in a negative way, but he was contradicting everything I had learned
Mm,
about how to run a business.
mm,
And there was something in his sharing that I just knew was true. I could feel it. I'd never been touched like that before, you know. I think often I was touched intellectually by teachers and coaches and mentors, but this teacher touched me here, and I wanted more. I wanted more of what he was sharing, even though I was kind of stamping my feet against it because it was going against what I had invested in and learned, what I knew worked. But there was a feeling of ease, a feeling of gentleness, and I was hungry for that. And as a result of meeting that teacher, um, and he introduced me to these principles that guide life. And that changed everything for me. because I began to understand that I didn't have to effort so much, that my thinking didn't mean what I thought it meant,
Yeah.
and that worry was optional.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just couldn't, thankfully, I couldn't go back to operating in my business the old way.
Mm.
You know, I describe it as the serum went in and there was sort of no turning back. You know, when you put a really good cream on, you can just feel it. You don't want to go back to the crap stuff. So that experience of just being mentored and being mentored by him and learning about these principles that guide life, and seeing things through a new lens led me to begin to, you know, work in a new way, operate in a new way, just less effortful. And I'm just really grateful that right up to today, you know, here we are 10 years later, you know, right up to today, that's still my experience of my business. It can be glamorous and effortless. It can be international and enjoyable. It doesn't have to um, burn us out.
Mm. Yeah, and that's actually what pulled me back to work with you again recently, because obviously having worked with you 10 years ago at the beginning and learning a lot of the things that you probably learned too about how we should run a business and how to do it the traditional way, which does involve a lot of efforting and a lot of marketing a certain way, and can really lead to burnout, and certainly did for me at points in the journey. So watching you, I always kind of kept in contact because I find your posts really inspiring. For one thing, they are beautiful. You have beautiful pictures, you live in Italy, you share your life. So it is that kind of glamorous inspiration, but they're also meaningful. And so I was, seeing your posts every now and again, and I just got the sense of she's doing it differently. Like, we can recognize truth, can't we? It's what you were just saying, that feeling. It's not necessarily intellectual, but we can feel it. We can feel truth. And I was just curious, how is she doing this? How is she still running a business and still being really successful as a coach and making good money? But she's not striving, she's not efforting, she's not burning out. And that piqued my curiosity and was why I circled back around to work with you.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, that's beautiful, Julie, because as you said, you know, you can recognize truth. That's the beauty of living your life and just living your message versus needing to share your message and make sure people get it. You know, we get to show up, and I see you doing this so beautifully too. We get to show up just in our well-being, letting that level of well-being we are living in, letting that do the heavy marketing for us, because people recognize the truth of that. That's what I felt from that teacher. Like, this guy is is living in a level of well-being. I couldn't put a name to that at the time, but the feeling I got from him was better than any level of marketing he could have done.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know, I kind of describe that in with my clients. You've heard me say it, Julie, I'm sure, as well, in the mastermind. I describe that as being energetically open for business.
Yes.
You know, so often, as you and I learned in the early days, and it worked for us, hey, it got our business off the ground. We learned effort and action, and doing it a certain way is what works. And it, you know, we're not going to like just throw that out. No, that was wrong. That was great. It got us up and running. And then we got smarter and we got wiser, and we considered other ways of doing things. But if what I see a lot is innocently just people being in the world of action and striving and not considering this energetic aspect of being energetically open for business. Today, I was working with a couple of clients. I'm just transitioning back into work after my month off in August that I take every year. And I said, I'll take two clients today and just ease in. And we were exploring together, both of them, you know, the importance of being energetically open for business.
Yes.
You know what that looks like. Well, it's important, first of all, because that's the feeling you're going to emit to your people. No matter how good your marketing is, if you're exhausted or you're resentful, it's going to be felt.
Yeah.
And we were looking at, well, what really helps people open up energetically for business? And both of my clients, they were making the connection between doing what they absolutely feel inspired to do and they absolutely love doing, and that helping them then just open up energetically rather than spending all their time and energy on low priority, resentful tasks.
Yes.
So um that's something that I think, you know, we walk our talk when we're living in our well-being. And as coaches and mentors and teachers, we want to be living in that level of well-being, but it's less about more massages and better sleep. And it's a little more about, are you are you aligning to your highest priorities on a daily basis? Are you allowing yourself the space and prioritizing the space and time to do whatever makes you feel good, settles you down? And that goes a long way for people that are building a business.
It really does. And something you have helped me with so much. I mean, you've helped me with many things, but a couple of things that spring to mind. Number one, settling my mind, because our minds can be so busy. And you taught me about what thought really is. And then we don't have to actually believe our thinking and listen to our thinking. So I want to talk in a minute about Bob the drunk guy, but we'll circle back to him in a minute. But you taught me about settling my mind. You also have taken a really strong stand for rest, which was one I struggled with because all of my training and conditioning and what I'd learned about building a business was action, 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 hustle. Even though my brand is Do Business Like a Woman, which is against hustle, still there was an element of that would creep in. And I had a really difficult time thinking that it was okay to rest and to stop. But it's been so key to me becoming energetically open for business and going through the transformation I've been through recently. And I certainly know what it feels like to be not energetically open for business. And for me, that would look like doing all the action, and maybe I'd be doing a launch or something, and I'd be working so hard and I'd be exhausted, and I might create some results, but it felt like pushing a boulder up the hill. And sometimes there wouldn't be results, or you would get a client, but then you'd feel kind of, like you say, resentful about serving that client. So I really can feel the difference between what it's like to kind of hustle and do what you think you should do, and then opening energetically for business.
Yeah. And that's wonderful, Julie, because as you make that shift, which you have been in the midst of, you just can't go back to the other way. You just, and people feel it from you. I have learned to respect my service. I thought that because I loved what I do, and because I have you know, energy to do it and give it and do it. I thought that that meant, well, I didn't need so much rest or downtime or quietening of the mind time. And what I've come to learn is it doesn't matter how much you're inspired by it and love what you're doing. You want to respect that the profession you're in or entering in, as many people are, you want to respect the output, the outpouring that goes on, whether it's marketing, building, coaching, clients, or whatever. You want to respect there's a level of outpour that that requires or deserves uh you you know I just, to put it bluntly, getting more rest. And I don't mean more sleep,
No.
I mean a rested mind.
Yes. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It can be hard to put into words if this is a new concept for people, but it is a feeling, isn't it? We can feel the truth of it. It's interesting, I don't, people believe different things, but even Jesus rested. He would go off into the desert and say, no, I'm not healing anyone else. I just got to go and top up and be by myself. So, it's if it's good for him. But what do we mean? And in a minute, we're going to talk about your mastermind, because you have a mastermind to create your thriving coaching practice with less efforting. So I've been through it. I've done the mastermind. It's absolutely amazing. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But just before we do, can you explain what or who is Bob the Drunk Guy?
Of course. Yeah. I think this is an analogy that I have used since 2016, when a colleague of mine and I were just having a conversation in New York, and he was the one that mentioned Bob, and I have just used it ever since. I thought it was brilliant. Um, so we all have levels of insecure thinking. It's just how humans are. We have different flavors of thought. And one of the flavors of thought is insecurity. That might show up as fear, worry, anxiety. And we feel that insecurity because the thinking is usually pretty dull and kind of horrible. Right. Like, and this is the thing that I learned the most, that helped me the most, Julie, was that, the feeling is always alerting us to the way we're using thought.
Mm,
That was huge for me. The
yeah.
feeling is not telling us anything about the future. It's not telling us anything about who we are truly. The feeling is telling us how we're using thought.
Let me just pause there for a second, because I want people to hear that, because that is so huge. It would be easy to miss it, but it's absolutely huge. And I have to remind, or I choose to remind myself daily of this, because I can get into a feeling and, oh, it means something about the future. Let's take fear as an example. Maybe I'm experiencing fear, and then there are all these thoughts, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to happen in the future, and catastrophizing, feeling insecure. What you just said, what I heard is the feeling is to do with the thinking that we're having. It doesn't mean anything about the future. It doesn't even mean anything about the past. We are feeling our thoughts, right?
Yes, that's right. Now, there is a little friend of ours called Bob. Let's call him that. But if you think about it this way, on every street corner of a big city, there's usually some poor homeless guy, right? And he might be drinking, or he might be drugged up or whatever. Or he's having a bad day. And he's usually like screaming obscenities, you know? And there's no way you would go to him for advice. Like, you wouldn't go and say to him, hey, excuse me, I'm just trying to go to, would you tell me how to get there? you would just walk past him and you might feel pity for him. You might give him a few dollars or pounds or whatever. Well, there's a similar character in our mind, and we call him Bob the drunk. And he is screaming obscenities and he is shouting and he is scaring you and he is telling you how it's never going to work. But just as you wouldn't go to Bob the drunk in real life on the street, you don't want to go to Bob the drunk in your head for advice or anything. And innocently, when people don't know that they're living in a world of thought, that the feeling they're getting is indicative of the thinking they're living in. When people don't know that, they keep going back to Bob and listening to Bob and trying to get advice from Bob and hoping that, right? Because the feeling is compelling. When you feel insecure, when you feel scared, it's so compelling because it's seductive. A feeling is seductive. And as we go on this journey and we start to understand how the mind really works, we get discerning about who's in the house, how tired we are. Plays a role.
It really does.
Because I've noticed, and I'm sure you have too, Julie, Bob gets louder when we get less rested.
Yes.
Right.
Something that you taught me and I have experienced over and over, and Bob can be so loud sometimes. So even those of us who know this, it's easy to slip when we're tired and we start listening and we forget it's just Bob, it's just our thoughts. It can be so seductive.
So seductive, which is another reason why I do take a stand for more rest. And within that rest, a rested mind. Now, that has the power to quieten down Bob's noise. How do we know Bob's in the house? We feel insecure, we feel scared, we feel worried, we're not sleeping well, we're waking up at night. We're getting discouraged about our business, our hopelessness is creeping in, we're procrastinating, there's no action happening. All indicators that we're tuned in innocently to that voice of Bob and being seduced by these feelings of insecurity. So as we get wiser, as we understand how the mind works, as we get well rested internally and sometimes externally, how about saying no a bit more to things you don't really want to be doing? We open up energetically for business.
Yes.
And we just live in a nicer feeling. We're not so seduced by Bob. We make better choices. Decisions get easier. We're not being run by this drunken, crazy that just has all the worst case scenarios.
Yeah. And this is really what the mastermind is about, but it's focused on creating a thriving coaching practice, but it's bringing in these principles. It's helping to recognize and quiet when Bob is screaming and shouting, because he can certainly get very active on the business building journey. So it's a completely different way to create a thriving practice, different to anything I've ever experienced before in the world of online coaching and business building. I would love for you to share a little bit about the mastermind and what it is. And I'm happy to share my experience of it too. But it is to do with building a thriving coaching practice, isn't it? So, how do these principles help us to do that?
Yeah. Well, a thriving coaching business and a thriving life, you know, because because you sort of one without the other is futile. So it's a pretty holistic approach. You know, the mastermind is really it came to me about a year ago when I discovered that I was celebrating a decade in my own coaching business. And given the number of people who haven't had success, and some of my colleagues who have, you know, given up and moved on to something else, I just thought, wow, this is a miracle. I've been at this for 10 years. And I considered, well, what has worked? What really worked, Grace? And for me, Julie, I just put together that mastermind in terms of the spiritual and the practical
Mm.
of what has supported me and the clients I've worked with to really thrive in their business and in their life. Um, and that's what the mastermind is. It's an exploration week by week on the spiritual and the practical principles that grow a business effortlessly and leave you thriving in a feeling of well-being in your life. Because, you know, there's no point, as we said, you know, having the success but burning yourself out. So as people will see, if they're interested in having a look, you know, there are certain themes that we go through to support the practitioner, the coach, the business owner. And there are a couple of integration sessions where you're just in your life living your learning.
Mm.
um, and so the mastermind, very important point here, the mastermind is within you. And my hope is that anybody engaging that program gets more and more connected to that wisdom within, because that was one of the key things that I saw in 10 years. The success I or anyone else I worked with had was born from listening to that voice within that had an idea, tuning out of Bob's opinion about it, and being centered in that mastermind within and following through with action.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's beautiful about this, because it's got both. It's got the connection to the innate wisdom and it's got the action. You know, before I came into the previous mastermind that you ran, I was feeling really lost in my business because, like you, I've been doing this for 10 years now, and you know, I'm still here, still coaching. So, as you said, that's quite a miracle in itself. Thank you. Learned from the best, but thank you. Yeah, because a lot of people do not make it that far, and it doesn't go that way. So that in itself was huge, but I was feeling quite disenchanted with the world of online marketing and the coaching world as is. And I knew that there had to be a different way, but I felt very lost listening to different mentors and different voices. What you and the mastermind helped me do was reconnect to my own inner wisdom. And sometimes that was frustrating because I felt like saying, Grace, just tell me what to do. Just, you know, stop all this spiritual stuff. Just give me the steps. But I was wise enough to know, no, that's what we did before. I know where that leads. It will get you so far. But actually, for me, taking the rest, giving myself permission, getting quiet, and then I could hear the inner wisdom, then I could hear the direction. And now I'm so happy. I'm really enjoying my life and my business. It's taken a different turn. There are some results happening now, because that was a big fear I had as well at the beginning was, okay, well, this spiritual stuff, it sounds great, you know, and I was already on a spiritual path, but I was like, if I do what you're suggesting and just rest, everything's going to fall apart and I'm not going to get results. So I think it's important to speak to that, because I think there is this fear or this idea, okay, if I, relax and just chill, I'm not going to get the results. Actually, you can have both, right?
That's right. That's right. And um, there are clients that come into the sessions. They absolutely need the practical elements that I share. And then there are clients like yourself, Julie, who have lots of practical under their belt and then need the other side, which is that connection to an inspired vision, direction, a clarity. So it's not that we just relax and do nothing. Rather, we kind of just know as we're going along, you know, who's over efforting and who needs, you can hear it as you're going along as we go through the mastermind. As is it that you're needing to look in the direction of the spiritual, or is it that you're needing to look in the direction of the practical? But again, one without the other is futile. The beauty of hearing your inner mastermind, that voice within that's louder than Bob, that's going to move you far quicker on the path of least resistance more easily than anything else. The beauty of hearing that direction within you is that you are then inspired to take action. You might have to do some learning around the action. That's why the calls are weekly. You might have to get some know-how. Some people, they want to take an action and they don't know where to start. But the beauty is, you can't really keep a lid on an idea that you've heard from your mastermind, because you're enlivened. It gives you energy to do it.
Yes.
I mean, it gives you a sense of finally some clarity on my approach.
Yeah. And a sense of flow and enjoyment. I mean, something that I'm noticing that's huge is, yes, the energy that's being released, but also the enjoyment. I mean, when we look at why do we want success and money and clients and things in the first place, ultimately it's to have a certain feeling. Well, why don't we just go straight to the feeling? And those things are still going to happen. That's the point. And with you, Grace, it's brilliant because you have the practical know-how. You have done all the marketing and you've built a multiple six-figure coaching business. You've got the practical, but you also have this deep spiritual connection. And I mean, you've been through a lot of personal challenges and things that have really deepened that connection. So that is what I think is so special about the mastermind and your approach. So it's 12 weeks, isn't it? And there's weekly calls, there's some integration time. It's a really special container. And honestly, it's not that expensive. It really isn't. So did you want to, we're going to share the link underneath this interview so people can have a look. Did you want to share anything else, Grace?
Well, I just think if you're listening to this and you have a feeling of, you know, just have a feeling of easiness about being supported this way, check it out. It's right around the corner, starting on September 11th. And we'd love to have you in the next round. So just, yeah, check it out and get in touch if you like, as well. And, that's it. It's like you said, Julie, if we're feeling disenchanted with what our service in the world, we want to get back to that enjoyment. We want to get beyond that noise in our head and reconnect with that mastermind. So I love that. I think that's what I really enjoy, helping people really fall back in love with what they're doing, and respecting what they're doing in the world,
That's something
respecting
else
that.
too. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for everything you do, all the work in the world. I'm so glad that we're still connected. We're going to post the link to the page about the mastermind. People can have a look. But what's the best way for people to get in contact with you if they want to connect directly?
well, some people might prefer also just to have a look at my writing. I have quite a popular blog on the website, gracefulcoaching.net. And if you want to get in touch with me from there, there's also a contact form on the website. And I usually receive that and can then write you back and set up a call to explore more.
Fantastic, lovely. And you're on Facebook too, so people can find you there, Grace Kelly, and you have a group. What's your group called again? Forgotten now.
Actually, Grace
Grace
Notes,
Notes.
same
That's
as my
it.
blog. Yeah,
Yeah.
Grace
Okay. Fantastic.
Paddling.
Love it, love it. Thank you so much. I always get so much from the conversation. It's always so rich. So if you are interested in what Grace is offering, definitely reach out. You can also chat to me, and I'm happy to share my experiences of working with Grace. So thank you again, Grace, and yeah, enjoy.
Bye. Have a good day. Bye, everybody.